says, I'm back. This is Smart Destroyer 55 back at it again with another rant. It's been quite a while since I made a good old rant for y'all. A lot has been happening in the world. The wrestling world still remains pretty shit. WWE and AEW continue to put on the worst possible content a real wrestling fan could ever watch and all that. Now, I will say WWE has been improving, mainly because they have completely gave a middle finger to all the libtards and finally became based. What with the controversy of white women pretending to be Mexican, criticizing El Grande Americano, to Logan Paul continuing to get screen time, much to the dismay of wokesters crying and whining about him in their little echo chamber called Blue Sky. But it's still not without problems. There's still a bunch of woke snowflakes on their roster, including Chelsea Green, who tries to play up her president gimmick by disrespecting the true American way and throwing out a middle finger to the best president in US history. Hey, Chelsea. How about instead of trying to say a woman could be president, how about you go back to cleaning Zack Ryder's figure shelves? Along with that, Triple H tries to force women's wrestling in my face by giving each of the women mid-card titles. One held by Chelsea Green and one held by Lara Valkyria, who is just one of the shittiest industry plants I've ever watched. She can't wrestle for shit, and the only reason she's even in this spot is because Becky Lynch, who is also an industry plant, wanted to see her succeed. Along with that, the new bloodline is bad. Nobody cares about a feud that started in bingo halls being a part of the biggest wrestling stage. While John Cena's heel turn is interesting, I feel it's about 10 years too late. And wasting it on a shitty Nepo baby like Cody Rhodes just downplays Cena's legacy. Hell, maybe we'll see improvement. I really hope we see Triple H listen to the real fans more. But other than that, it's been a mixed bag of good shit and bad shit. On the opposite side of the fence, we have AEW, and AEW continues to be a smarks paradise. Since the Max deal, it's clear that Warner Discovery doesn't care about growing their audience. The deal is cozy, Tony Khan still has a shit ton of his daddy's money to spend. And so AEW, unfortunately, will not go away for a long time. It's all about wrestling, and not keeping the crowd and the viewers watching entertained with stories and characters. Tony Khan can sniff an 8-ball and book a match between two luchadors but don't care about all he wants. No one's gonna remember it. No one's gonna talk about it the next day. See, when John Cena turned heel, everyone was talking about it. I bet you if you go down the street right now and ask someone about Cena's heel turn, then they'll probably give you a proper response. Whereas if you ask something about the Death Riders and them taking over AEW, that same person will probably think you're mentally ill. There are zero major stories going on in AEW that anybody cares about. But what about Tony Storm and Mariah May? And that bear might ask. Well, guess what? It's not a good story. It's just two perverts barely hiding their fetishes in the ring and grossing a normal-ass person out. Tony making wink, wink, nudge, nudge innuendos and bleeding all over the place, in front of children, mind you, isn't telling a story. It's just making a normal, casual fan turn away. Top that off with the pointless violence courtesy of Jon Moxley and Edge. By the way, I am not calling him Cope. Calling him Cope disrespects and shits all over the legacy Edge left behind in WWE. Moxley took a back bum into nails, and when I watched this, I nearly wanted to rip Tony Khan's eyes out of their sockets. Imagine thinking that CZW deathmatch bullshit that injures wrestlers and breeds the most disgusting subset of fans is welcome to mainstream wrestling. Then again, Moxley brought it upon himself because he thinks bleeding every match and being as edgy as a Hot Topic kid, saying he's misunderstood because his mom wouldn't drive him to the mall, is somehow the key to success. Which, it isn't. Imagine looking at Roman Reigns, who held the WWE Universal Championship for over 1,000 days, gets massive pops every time he steps into the building, and Seth Rollins, who continues to get huge crowd reactions, and thinking that Moxley, the guy who tries to get himself killed every match, is the best member of the Shield. Are you okay in the head? Along with that, Mercedes Moné, who never puts anyone over, constantly takes away screen time, cries like a toddler whenever she doesn't get her way, and left WWE because she wouldn't do her goddamn job, is constantly on TV, and whenever I see her have a, quote, competitive match against some no-name schoolgirl from Japan, I instantly turn off the TV and do something more productive. Along with that, Kenny Omega, a guy who wrestled a 9-year-old in Japan and has a shit ton of skeletons in his closet, is still being regular featured. And on top of that, we have the regular featuring of one Will Ospreay. Remember that one nerdy kid nobody liked in high school? The one who kept talking about comic books and video games to people who could give less of a fuck and then constantly got shoved into lockers for it? Yeah, that's Will Ospreay. He's a fucking nerd that deserves to be shoved in lockers. He thinks doing flips, kicks, and moves from no-name Japanese wrestlers somehow makes you a good wrestler. He thinks making promos where he overuses British terms and calls out Triple H for no reason other than he ran for the grind makes you a good wrestler. He thinks wrestling twinks like Kyle Fletcher and looking like a big deal to the smarks that buy his shirts and sing a shitty theme song makes him a good wrestler. Along with that, they continue to hire shitty flippy dudes with zero charisma who belong more in a circus sideshow than they do a wrestling ring. What with Ricochet, a disrespectful asshole who thinks he's on the level of a Rock or Austin but really is a curtain jerker for life, and Speedball Mike Bailey, a no-name Canadian who thinks not wearing shoes makes him special, coming into the fray, it goes to show AEW is never going to change. Don't get me fucking started on Big Boom AJ, a 40-year-old loser who got big off an unfunny meme, rotting the brains of future generations, getting into competitive matches because, well, you see, he was a wrestler when he was younger. And guess what? He never made it anywhere. He never had people going to shows for him, he was never picked up by the WWE, so he never made it anywhere in the business. And yet AEW, being for the shickos, is constantly insulting the intelligence of real wrestling fans by putting this failed Gen Alpha brain rot meme in the spotlight. Remember when wrestling was treated with respect? Remember in the 90s and the early 2000s when wrestling had most of the world watching every week? When wrestlers like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin were considered household names? Where compelling, enticing storylines that rival blockbuster movies would keep fans hooked and watching the next week? Man, I miss those days. Professional wrestling as a whole has regressed to a point where only nerds and children like it. WWE and AEW are bad, TNA has a couple of bright spots but is ultimately going to get swallowed up by WWE. The indies are filled with a bunch of copy-paste self-marks who try so desperately to be signed by the major companies that it backfires on them. Nobody watches Lucha Libre, nobody watches Japanese wrestling and Joshi fetish bait. Wrestling as a whole has been dead for years and no single company is trying to make it better. They just want to line their pockets with the most money possible, which means appealing to everyone and not the fans who really care. There are times where I wish a third major company would come around, and I want to be ran by someone who knows what they're doing. Eric Bischoff, Jim Cornette, anybody. They get constantly hated by the snowflakes in the wrestling world because they're honest with everyone, and like myself, Smart Destroyer 55, they're true fact spitters. We need someone to bring real wrestling back. Maybe someone can get in touch with Elon Musk and get him to fund the big wrestling company. With real stars, real characters, good storylines. You know, Elon Musk is the financial backer, Jim Cornette is the booker. Make it happen. And with that, the rant is over. I could go on a bit longer, but I gotta get going to yell at people for Twitter engagement. So I would like to say goodbye. This has been Smart Destroyer 55, the fact spitter, a real wrestling fan, signing off. And if you're offended by this video, go cry to your boyfriend. When you cry, my friend.